Welcome to the Let's Keep It Light podcast, and thanks for listening. In this episode, Ginger and Marcie will discuss the relationship between circulatory health and light therapy.
So today we're talking about the effect of photobiomodulation or light therapy on circulatory health.
One of the major topics that we have not covered, that we've talked all around how wonderful light therapy, photobiomodulation is for health and wellness, and have never really mentioned the value for cardiovascular health and the impact it has just in general well-being. So let's get started. Let's go.
Okay, let's do it.
So when we apply light, photobiomodulation to the body,
Through what means?
from any device, product, whatever we have that provides that wavelength of red and infrared to the body.
Okay, so just as in case this is the listener's first time they're listening to an episode, generally or most commonly we're talking about red and infrared light therapy, although there are other wavelengths. For this conversation, it's red and infrared, most often delivered by either light therapy pads, torches, panels, mats, or pin light or micro lights.
The beauty of that is that it really doesn't matter what it is that's transporting the wavelengths. It's the wavelength that does the work when it gets into the body. And one of the major gifts of photobiomodulation is this dilation, vascular dilation of the blood vessels. We don't think about it much, but our blood vessels constrict as we get older or just, throughout the day. We don't have expanded vessels sometimes. And therefore, we don't have oxygen to our tissues like we could have them if the blood vessels were dilated.
So light therapy increases circulation because it's a vasodilator.
Absolutely. And just that information is huge and very valuable. In addition to that, part of what happens in the circulatory system is the release of a molecule called nitric oxide. And nitric, not
nitrous oxide, which is what we get when we go to the dentist, when we get what we would call laughing gas so we don't experience the pain of dental work. It's not nitrous oxide that's happening. It's nitric oxide.
And nitric oxide is famous. It's been called the miracle molecule because of all the things and all of the benefits that it gives, which we will talk about in just a little bit. But the value of adding photobiomodulation to our system, to our health, to our daily routine is this enhancement of our cardiovascular system. And one of the best things that we can talk about is the fact that as the body uses, as this happens, we're getting all of the benefits that you can imagine that are necessary for health and wellness. And nitric oxide is that key to health and wellness that we hardly ever talk about, but is very, very valuable.
It was as recent as 1998 that 3 PhDs won the Nobel Prize for discovering what nitric oxide actually does in the body. They knew that it was a gas and they knew it did something, but they didn't know exactly what it did.
So these fellas were, we talk about them as wonderful scientists. I consider them heroes because of their ability to let us know the value of this and how important it is. Now, there are some structures in the body that are involved in health and wellness that we haven't talked about. And if you go back to your 7th grade science, you might have heard that there is a structure called a mitochondria. And that is the engine, basically, the powerhouse of the cell. It's what uses oxygen to burn up food. Well, how does the oxygen get to it? Through circulation. Through the expanded circulation means that it's a healthy system. If we get constricted, if our vessels are constricted because of illness or just no exercise, no photobiomodulation, then there's a delay in the effectiveness of the powerhouse of the cell, and our energy levels go down. So it's a very simple system. The body seems to work really efficiently with this system. So one of the things that we want to talk about is the fact that this beautiful gift to us of the dilation of the blood vessels means that the nitric oxide can do jobs that you can't imagine. They are capable, this molecule is capable of being the first line of defense in terms of disease. And it is incredibly important for vasodilation of other organ systems.
So just kind of to recap in simple language, with the release of nitric oxide and the increased vasodilation, so the increase in circulation, once we put the light therapy on the body, then the oxygen is getting to the cells more efficiently, and the toxins are coming away from the cells more efficiently. And the powerhouse of the cell is working better.
Exactly. So what we know as a molecule, we say, well, what kind of molecule runs around and doing all this good work? It's a messenger molecule, and it transmits signals from one system to another. Extremely important in the communication of our system working as a team, as it were. So not only does it affect the cardiovascular system, it's important for neurons to be healthy. It is effective as an immune system support. It's amazing when we start looking at this, and we'll talk about one aspect of nitric oxide and the immune system when we talk about COVID. But this is very much part of what we're talking about today. So, Ginger, can you go through the list of things that the nitric oxide is important for?
Well, I'll just do this off the top of my head. So let me just rattle off a few. In the presence of nitric oxide, which our body is releasing anyway, the healthier we are, the more we exercise, the more we're releasing nitric oxide. And just placing the lights on us, the body is releasing more, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. So in the presence of the release of nitric oxide, here's some amazing things that happen. Okay. For one thing, we already talked about increasing circulation, decreasing pain and inflammation, but it also stimulates collagen production. It stimulates the support of, it supports the release of osteoblasts. So it's increasing bone density and helping to repair fractures. It also supports phagocytosis, which means that it makes an unfriendly environment for pathogens. That's helpful. Pathogens like viruses, bacteria, funguses, parasites. It helps with that. Let's see. What are the other wonderful things that it does? It helps, well, when we're increasing the circulation like that, what else is happening is a release of endorphins. So it makes us feel better. So that, we feel better. I know I do after a light therapy session. What else am I missing there?
Well, there is reproductive tissue. I mean, when we say that heals tissue, well, tissues have to make new tissues. And nitric oxide is very important, and they call it cell proliferation. So how do you make new tissue? Nitric oxide is important in providing the oxygen, et cetera, but they have labeled that as one of the benefits of increased nitric oxide.
So angiogenesis,
Angiogenesis.
the regrowth of capillaries. Every time we would use, I'm sure about it on the pad-based system because Dr. Burke, Thomas Burke, really ground that into us that the first time you use the pad, 1 capillary grows. The next time it's 2. The next time it's 4. The next time it's 16. And so it is actually regenerative and restorative. Using light therapy on a regular basis.
There are now products that provide nitric oxide. In other words, if you take a product that is drawn from beets, there are products on the marketplace that, in a sense, increase the nitric oxide. So it's not just our language that it's important. It's other languages now, and health all across the marketplace is let's have more nitric oxide. And the value of using light over product, like a pill, is that it is systemic and it doesn't have any issues with it. So I highly recommend for health and wellness, the reason for using it for health and wellness is really a great part of it is nitric oxide.
So good time for a little story of increasing the circulation so a family member, this is at least 10 years ago that this happened, an elderly family member, I'm thinking that she was about 82 or so at the time, lived with my mother, and who was also in her 80s. And so we called this family member Good Ma. Okay, so Good Ma, I came every time I go home to Louisiana, I'm always if there's a new thing that I know about, I want to share it with my family because, as I've said in a different episode of this, I try everything, all the new things that I love or am exposed to that I think I love, I try it on my family first. They're my guinea pigs. So I was very excited, and I had just gotten my first light therapy device, and I was having really good results with it. I already told the story in another episode about my singing voice coming back after using light therapy on my throat, once, and then repeating it 4 days later, and how impressive that was for me. So I was having really good results with the people I was using it with. So, of course, when it was time to go to New Orleans to visit the family, I brought my system. And so my mother and Good Ma each had big lounge chairs. They were sitting in the living room. We would always go in there to visit them. And, that's where the family sort of gathered. And so Good Ma came. My mother was already sitting in her big lounge chair. And so Good Ma came with her walker and with tennis balls on the bottom of the walker on the front legs. It must have taken her 20 minutes to go across a small living room. I am not exaggerating. Well, maybe a little bit. Maybe it was 15 minutes. But to get from where she entered the living room to get to her recliner, it was kind of a painful thing, to watch that process. So by the time she actually got all the way sat down, it had been a while. So I told her I was using the lights on my mother, and I told her after Mama, we're going to use them on you. And she's like, oh, no, I don't know. Because I was with my mother, I had them on her naked hands and naked feet. And, so it was right on skin. But Good Ma was not only completely clothed, but she had heavy stockings on as well. And so she didn't want to go and have to take her stockings off and all of that. But her hands were available and she could take her shoes off. So she argued for a little while, but finally I got her to agree to just try it. So I put one of the pads face up. She put her hands on it. She took her shoes off, so she had her stocking feet on another one of the pads that had 264 diodes on both of these pads, okay, of very high quality red and infrared light. So she put her feet on them again over her stockings, and then she didn't want to. We had a what people would call an eye mask, but it's really a face mask. It covers the eyes and the sinus points and the frontal lobe of the brain. And nothing doing. She didn't want that. So I think I convinced her to let me put that on the back of her head. Okay. And she fell asleep almost instantly. Well, that wasn't really weird for me because I fall asleep within the first couple of minutes. A lot of times, even sitting up on the couch, reading a book or doing something, if I put the lights on me, that circulation starts flowing, those, the nitric oxide's going, and consequently those endorphins are flowing, and it's so relaxing, and I fall asleep. So it wasn't odd for me that she fell asleep. But since she was sleeping, even though she had given me some stink about doing doing the lights to start with, I'm like, I'm going to take advantage of this. And so I hit the button again. So I had done, my system turns itself off after 20 minutes. And so I hit it again. So she was on the lights for 40 minutes. And so I was like, I just knew I was helping her. And I certainly wasn't hurting her. As we know, it's a general wellness device. So anyway, the system went off. She had 40 minutes, and then she woke up. And when she woke up, she woke up a few minutes after it turned off the second time. So maybe this was like 50 minutes or so in the chair. She woke up. I took the pads off her. She looked around, and then she jumped out of the chair and pretty much ran across the room to go get something. She forgot her walker. She wasn't walking slow. She was actually running. And all of us were like stunned, because if we hadn't seen that ourselves, we wouldn't have believed it. So I do want to tell one more story, and then we'll get back to the science, because I do think stories help us to remember, okay, my father or my husband or wife or somebody, has this issue. Maybe I should try light therapy on them. So another story is I worked a trade show, and we had a booth for light therapy, and a 103-year-old man was wheeled in, all hunched over, but he was wheeled in by his daughter. It was a 4-day trade show. So every day she brought this man to the booth to get a free 20-minute session of light therapy. Again, on the first day, he was completely hunched over, and we had to do the light therapy with him in the wheelchair, obviously. Second day, same thing. Third day, same thing. But he was straighter each day and more alert each day. On the fourth day, she wheeled him up. He got out. He did his light therapy session, free session. She went to put him back, tell him to get back in the wheelchair at the end of his session. He started running down the aisle with her chasing him and me chasing behind. And the daughter was saying, "Get back in, get in the chair." And he goes, "I just got out of that damn thing. I'm not getting back in." And I swear that is an absolute honest to God true story. And I took a picture. I had to get a picture taken of the three of us. And he's standing up and he looks so proud. So that was after 20 minutes, 3 or 4 days. That, to me, when I say I like miracles and I get miracles, I'm saying that's a miracle.
So the gift of light, if you look at that from the perspective that it is a gift that is part of the changing and modulating what's not working well.
Wait,
So-
say that again.
So what happened to the gentleman and to Good Ma is that the light, the photobiomodulation, impacted the tissues that were not working well. And that made the difference in their ability to do differently, to do more holistically than they had been doing before.
So one of the things I want to just throw out there, because I've done this with a number of clients and just kind of get your response or feedback on this, is that in both cases, we had them put their hands and their feet on the light with the idea that we're bringing the circulation to the extremities. And we put pads elsewhere, over the navel, usually at the mid-back, so we get the kidney, adrenals. But now, especially if it's someone who for any reason is concerned about doing the light, maybe because they're so elderly or so ill, I feel so comfortable of just, let's put your hands, let's put your feet on the lights and get that circulation all the way to the extremities.
That is an excellent solution. And it one that allows individuals to say, yes, let's try photobiomodulation.
So just to recap, nitric oxide is affectionately now called the miracle molecule of the body. Because in the presence of the release of nitric oxide, there are so many physiological processes that are supported in the body. And we've named a few, but you can Google nitric oxide and see all the amazing things that it does. Well, one of the things we get reports on is on impotence. So sometimes things don't work in the nether regions. Well, if we increase circulation just naturally with the light therapy, then things start to work better.
That is absolutely correct.
So, so you all might remember that. Okay, anything else that you want to say about nitric oxide or increased circulation?
It just emphasizes the gift that photobiomodulation is. And that gift is better health and wellness functioning. And we've talked about it releasing or mitigating pain, but there's so many other wonderful gifts of health and wellness that it provides that this is just it's an overall global way of approaching your health and wellness.
So one last little short story is there was a sales rep for one of the light therapy companies. And I say sales rep in that she was an owner of a device. And if she sold a device, she would make some money. And so, but she was so enthusiastic about light therapy. And she was asked to go help work this show that it was all medical professionals who were coming to the different booths, and the light therapy booth that they were going to do was one of the only alternative or energy medicine devices that were going to be presented. So she really just did not speak medical language. She didn't understand medical language. She knew what it did for her and what it did for her family members and her friends. So she tells the story of being in the booth and all these amazing doctors and nurse practitioners and nurses and PTs were coming up and asking about the light therapy and said, well, would it help for this condition? And they would name a condition. What would it help for that disease? Would it help? And every time she said, the only thing I said, well, let me ask you this, doctor. You're the professional. Would an increase in circulation help that disease? And she said, every time the doctor or the practitioner or the PT would say, well, yes, it would. Well, there's your answer. So, folks, if an increase in circulation and a decrease in pain and inflammation would be helped by using light therapy, then maybe light therapy is for you.
Marcie Denton and Dr. Ginger Bowler are certified light therapy instructors and co-founders of the Light and Energy Training Seminar Certification Program. You can send us an email with your questions and comments to podcast@letskeepitlight.com, and be sure to visit us on Facebook and Instagram. This episode was engineered and mixed by Dr. Decibel Productions. I'm Sarah Weston. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Let's Keep It Light.